I'm Heather Lawson, 31 years old, and I was standing in my kitchen in Seattle staring at a text message from my parents that simply read, "Watch your sister's wedding online." That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just a link. Bianca hadn't spoken to me in over a year, not since she quietly removed me from her wedding plans without warning. Growing up, I always came second to her needs louder, her victories brighter. But in that moment with that message, something in me settled. It confirmed what I had always known, but never wanted to believe. I was never meant to be part of the picture. What I did next would change everything. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make the hard decision to walk away from people who were supposed to love you. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. 2 daughters in a modest 2-story home with a white porch swing out front and magnolia trees that bloomed every spring. Our parents, Richard and Diane, believed in politeness, hard work, and keeping up appearances. I followed the rules, got straight A's, held down a part-time job in high school, volunteered at the library every summer. Bianca, 3 years younger, danced her way through life literally. Ballet, jazz, cheer, you name it. She was bubbly, dramatic, always at the center of attention, and our parents adored her for it. When I turned 8, my birthday party was cake from the grocery store and a few girls from school in our backyard. A month later, Bianca's 5th birthday was a rented princess tent, a magician face painting, and custom cupcakes shaped like tiaras. I asked Mom why hers was so much bigger. "She just needs a little more attention, honey. You're so easy." That explanation followed me for years. When I brought home perfect report cards, my parents offered a quick good job and moved on. When Bianca scraped a B- in pre-algebra, we went out for dinner to celebrate how hard she'd worked. Dad used to say, "School just comes naturally to you, Heather. We don't want your sister to feel discouraged." In middle school, I placed first in the regional science fair. I stood on that stage medal around my neck, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. But no one came. My parents had taken Bianca to a dress rehearsal for her dance recital, one that didn't even have an audience. I still remember walking home alone, the medal heavy in my backpack. When I mentioned it later, Mom said, "There'll be more science fairs. Bianca only gets one shot at this performance." By the time I left for College State University on a partial scholarship, I had learned to expect very little. I worked 20 hours a week at the bookstore to cover my share of expenses, while Bianca went to a private college out of state, fully funded by our parents. When I brought up the difference, Mom shook her head and said, "She needs smaller classes, Heather. You're more independent. You always have been." After graduation, I took a job as a junior software engineer in Seattle. It wasn't glamorous at first, but it was mine. I built a life from the ground up, stable, quiet, and far from the noise of Charleston. Every raise, every promotion, every project milestone felt like a small rebellion against the version of me my family had decided I would be. But even with 3,000 miles between us, the patterns followed. Family holidays were always scheduled around Bianca's availability, even when I sent my work schedule months in advance. And yet when she needed help, car repairs, moving costs, I was always the one they called. "Family supports family," Dad would say. But it started to feel more like family used family. Then came Wesley. I met him one Thanksgiving. He was a friend of our cousin Jake, stranded for the holiday. We hit it off right away. Easy conversation, shared interests, a connection that felt real. We talked every day for weeks after. Until suddenly we didn't. I found out later why. He'd met Bianca during a visit to Jake's apartment. 2 months later, they were posting couple photos. I tried to bring it up once with Dad. Tried to tell him how I felt. But all he said was, "You girls were treated the same. You're imagining things." That night I signed up for therapy. And for a little while it felt like I had found my balance. Boundaries in place. Space to breathe. I sent cards and gifts when appropriate, answered calls, when I had the energy, kept holidays short. I focused on my work, my friendships, my life. So when I saw that Facebook post, she said yes. With a picture of Bianca on one knee, flashing a ring at Mount Rainier, I felt still. It wasn't that she got engaged. It was that no one thought to tell me. 3 days later, Mom called chirping about June wedding dates and country club venues. I asked how long they'd known. She said Wesley had asked for Dad's permission last month. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't know it yet, but the cracks were finally beginning to show. And the wedding, it was just the beginning. Bianca's engagement had been public for 3 full days before anyone thought to tell me. I'd been scrolling through Facebook late one Tuesday evening, just passing time after dinner, when her picture popped up. She was standing with Wesley at Mount Rainier, holding up her left hand toward the sunset. The caption read, "She said yes." I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. That mountain trail he and I had talked about hiking it together once. I'd sent him the park guide. It hadn't meant much at the time, not really, but seeing it now tied to this moment, it caught me off guard. No one had called, no text, not even a message from Mom. It wasn't until the next morning that the phone finally rang. "Isn't it wonderful news?" Mom asked, her voice bubbling over. "We're thinking June for the wedding. The country club already has the weekend blocked off. You'll need to put in your time off request soon." I asked her how long they'd known. "Oh," she said, pausing just a beat too long, "Wesley asked your father for permission a few weeks ago. We've all been dying to tell you, but Bianca wanted the proposal to be a surprise. She talked about catering menus after that, then florists." I just stood there in my kitchen listening to her move on, like I hadn't just found out about my sister's engagement through a stranger's social media post. Aunt Rachel called 2 days later. She was the only one in the family who ever seemed to read between the lines. "I saw the announcement," she said gently. "Are you doing okay?" "It wasn't serious," I told her. "We were just friends, nothing more." She didn't push, just said, "Well, I'm here if you ever want to talk. Family's messy sometimes." I told her I'd go to the wedding, said it out loud like it was a fact. Maybe showing up would help. Maybe it would smooth things over. I started looking at flights that week. Booked a hotel close to the venue. Bought a navy dress I thought would photograph well. It cost more than I wanted to spend, but it felt like a gesture, a peace offering. I even sent Bianca a message. "So happy for you and Wesley. Looking forward to celebrating with you both." Hours passed before her reply came in. "Don't make this about you, Heather." That was all. 7 words. No thank you. No smiley face. Just a warning. The next morning I told Danielle everything over coffee. "I'm walking into a minefield," I said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Call me anytime. I mean it. Even during the reception." A few days later, a group email arrived from Bianca, bridesmaid assignments. I was on the list alongside 3 of her college friends and our cousin Lauren. I let myself feel a little hopeful again. That night, Mom called. "Bianca wants everyone's hair the same," she said, "shoulder length with soft layers. You'll need to start growing yours out." I ran a hand over my short pixie cut. "My hair won't grow 6 inches in 3 months. We'll figure something out. This is her special day." The emails kept coming. A specific dress, custom shoes, matching earrings, hair and makeup appointments that we'd have to pay for out of pocket. 5 mandatory pre-wedding events, including a bachelorette weekend in Miami. Each message ended the same way. "This is the most important day of my life. If you can't fully commit, let me know now." I added another $1,000 to my wedding spreadsheet. Took 2 more vacation days off work. Tried to keep up. Then Mitchell, one of Bianca's high school friends, sent me a quiet text. "Just a heads up, Bianca's been making comments about you. You might want to be careful." When I asked what he meant, he didn't answer. Next came the dress. Mom called again to say the others had already picked theirs, so they ordered one for me, too. No fitting, no input. "It's non-refundable," she said. "We'll send you the bill." It was nearly $600, double the budget we were originally given. When I called to say the size was too small, Mom sighed. "Bianca thought it might help motivate you to slim down a bit before the wedding. All the girls are doing her special cleanse." I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't find the words. "She just wants her photos to look nice," Mom said finally. "Is that really so wrong?" That was the beginning of the spreadsheets. Bianca made a shared document with checkboxes, workouts, diet logs, weekly weight goals, skincare routines, color-coded progress. Mine was red across the board. The financial demands piled on. A few days later, she sent us a breakdown: $500 for the honeymoon fund, $300 for the bridal shower, required professional manicures, pedicures, facials, all out of pocket. I called Mom again. "I can't afford this. I've already spent over $3,000. She's marrying into the Larson family," she said. "Their circle gives expensive gifts. We can't look cheap." When I asked if everyone else was paying the same, she said yes. But Mitchell confirmed later that wasn't true. A few of the girls were getting help from their parents. Just not me. 8 weeks before the wedding, Bianca called. "We're expecting your shower contribution check by Friday," she said. "And I still haven't received your video for the montage. What video? I told you about it. Check your email." I checked. There was nothing. "I can still send something," I said, "but I need to know what you want in it. Everyone else figured it out without needing hand-holding," she said. "Just get it done." The next group message came a few days later. Dress colors had changed. We'd all need to order new ones, also non-returnable. Another $400. I suggested we dye the old ones. Bianca shot back, "If anyone feels they can't fulfill their bridesmaid duties, please contact me privately rather than creating drama." Lauren texted me later to say she was just as frustrated, but no one wanted to speak up. Bianca was holding the whole thing together with tension and control. Cousin Jake called after another family dinner I hadn't been able to attend. They spent 20 minutes talking about how difficult you've been, he said. Uncle Dave asked why you weren't in the family photo display at the reception. Aunt Linda changed the subject. I opened Instagram later that night. There they were, photos from the Miami bachelorette trip. Everyone in matching swimsuits I'd helped design. No mention of me. Bianca's caption read, "Grateful for friends who prioritize my happiness. Best bridesmaid. Ever I kept trying. Offered to help with the website, address invitations, build playlists. Every offer was ignored. When I missed a weekday lunch Bianca had scheduled with less than 24 hours' notice, Wesley's cousin texted me directly. Your absence is becoming a pattern. Maybe you should reconsider your involvement. I'd spent thousands of dollars, taken unpaid days off, changed my life around this wedding. And it still wasn't enough. 6 weeks before the wedding, Bianca called again. I've been thinking, she said. Having you as a bridesmaid might be putting too much pressure on you. What do you mean you've missed a lot of events? And there's been tension with the other girls. I think it would be better if you just attended as a guest. I didn't say anything. You're making this about money again, she added. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I asked if our parents agreed. They do? She said. It's just easier this way. Later that evening, I got a text from Wesley's mother. She said the decision felt wrong, that Wesley hadn't seemed comfortable with it, but Bianca had insisted. The next day, I received a formal email from Bianca and my parents explaining the updated wedding arrangements. It included instructions for arriving 30 minutes later than the bridal party and returning the unused dress for partial credit. At work during a meeting, someone asked if I was excited for the wedding. I couldn't answer. I just left the room. Kelsey, my supervisor, followed me to the break area. What's going on? She asked. I told her everything, not just about the wedding, but the pattern. A lifetime of being overlooked, silenced, pushed aside. She listened the whole way through, then asked me one simple question. Would you ever accept this treatment from anyone else in your life? That evening, I scheduled an emergency session with a therapist, and for the first time in my life, I considered the possibility that I didn't have to keep showing up for people who never showed up for me. I didn't cancel the flights right away. They were non-refundable. I'd already spent close to $4,000 between travel, hotels, gifts, and dresses. At first, it was easier to let the details sit untouched, just leave the confirmation emails unread and the suitcase half-packed at the foot of my bed. I told myself I needed time to think, but the truth was, I didn't know what I was waiting for. The apartment felt quieter than usual that week. Even Seattle's steady June rain seemed softer. I went into work, kept my head down, and avoided conversations about summer plans. My team knew I was supposed to be flying out for my sister's wedding, and a few people tried to ask about it gently. I kept the answers short. Danielle dropped by with takeout on Friday night. She didn't press for details, just sat beside me on the couch and passed me a container of sesame noodles. "Whatever you decide," she said, "you're not alone in it." The next morning, I met with Dr. Cameron, my therapist, for a Saturday session. She listened as I laid everything out, start to finish. The demotion, the email, the silence from my parents, the numbers on the spreadsheet, the feeling of being erased from something I'd been told to invest in. When I stopped talking, she asked, "What would happen if you didn't go?" I hadn't let myself ask that yet. "They'd be angry," I said finally. "They'd say I let the family down." And what are they doing now? That question stayed with me the rest of the day. That night, I pulled out a legal pad and wrote down every expense I'd already made. Flights, hotel, 2 dresses, bridal party contributions. Gifts, missed work. It totaled just under $3,900. I drew a line underneath it and wrote one sentence, "I will not spend another dollar on this wedding." The following day, I used my vacation request to block off the week anyway, but instead of heading east, I looked west. Olympic National Park had a last-minute cancellation at a quiet retreat for solo hikers. I booked it, packed boots and layers instead of heels and shapewear, and I told no one. A few days later, another text came through, this time from Bianca's future sister-in-law, Veronica. It was short. "Bianca told me about your dramatic reaction to the change. Honestly, your absence from the bridal party will be better for everyone. The photos will look cleaner." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Then, out of the blue, Wesley's parents called. "We just wanted to check on you," his dad, Tom, said. "We heard what happened. It didn't sit right with us. We've tried to stay out of the planning," his wife added. "But we wanted you to know not everyone is okay with how you were treated." I thanked them, told them I appreciated the call, and I meant it. As the wedding date got closer, I kept expecting another message from my parents, but the only updates came from the family group chat photos of welcome bags, rehearsal dinner seating charts, cousins arriving from out of town. I was included in the message threads, but no one spoke to me directly. Then on the morning of June 17th, my phone buzzed. A message from my parents' shared number. "Ceremony starts soon. Watch your sister's wedding online. Link and password below. No greeting, no context, just the live stream." 5 minutes later, another message came in from Bianca. "Don't ruin this for me by making any comments on the stream. Some of Wesley's family still doesn't know why you're not here." I sat with those words for a while, then opened my laptop. The screen filled with a soft, instrumental prelude, a camera slowly panning across a rose-lined garden at the country club. I recognized familiar faces, Aunt Rachel in lavender, Uncle Dave checking his watch, cousins whispering behind a program. My parents sat in the front row, neither looked at the camera. Wesley came down the aisle with his groomsmen. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I made a cup of tea and watched from my kitchen table as the ceremony began. No mention of me in the program. My name wasn't listed under family acknowledgments. I wasn't thanked. I wasn't missed. The bridesmaids, now 5 instead of 6, Walked in wearing the blue gowns I'd paid for. Madison, our cousin, took her place last. There was an empty chair beside my parents. She glanced at it, then looked away. Bianca came down the aisle last. The dress sparkled. The train caught in the breeze. She held onto our dad's arm like she was posing for a catalog cover. But something about her face didn't match the moment. As they reached the altar, I saw my mom lean toward someone in the front row. "Our only daughter," she said, nodding toward Bianca. "She's always been so special." The camera cut back to the officiant. I sat back in my chair, hands still resting around my mug. I hadn't cried. I hadn't moved. I hovered my finger over the mouse and clicked. The video disappeared. The screen returned to my desktop background, quiet blue water, a line of pine trees. The sound of the live stream was gone. The apartment felt still. I stayed like that for a while, then walked to the balcony and stepped outside. It was a clear day in Seattle, the kind that made the air feel soft on your skin. I didn't hear from anyone for nearly an hour. Then Mitchell texted, "Reception's a mess. DJ played the wrong first dance song. The cake collapsed during cutting. Wesley's mom had words with your parents. Thought you'd want to know." He sent another text 10 minutes later with a video from the father-daughter dance. Halfway through, my dad stepped on Bianca's dress. She stumbled, turned, and snapped something sharp at him before storming off the dance floor. "Several people asked where you were," Mitchell added. I didn't respond, just turned off my phone and left it on the table. Later that evening, my voicemail filled up with a message from Mom. "I saw you logged off the live stream. After everything we did to include you..." I deleted it before she finished the sentence. That night, I sat on my couch with a bowl of soup and no background noise, no texts, no calls, no music, just quiet. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. 2 days after the wedding, I took the ferry out to Bainbridge Island. I didn't have a plan, just packed a light jacket, brought a book I never opened, and walked along the shore trail until my legs got tired. I found a bench overlooking the water and sat there for a long time listening to the tide pull against the rocks. It was the first time in years I could remember choosing peace without asking for anyone's permission. The following afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new message. The contact name made me stop Wesley. "I owe you an apology," the text read. "What happened with the wedding and your exclusion wasn't right. There's a lot you don't know." I read it twice before responding. "I appreciate that. I hope you're enjoying your honeymoon." His reply came almost immediately. "We're not on one." Bianca flew to the resort. I'm staying at my parents' house. This marriage was a mistake. I set the phone down and left it there on the counter. Let the message sit while I folded laundry and watered the plant near my window. When I finally picked it back up, I still didn't know what to say. 2 weeks later, he called. I didn't answer at first. Then called back later that evening when the apartment was quiet and I had the space to hear whatever he was going to say. I should have said something sooner, he began, but I didn't know how. He told me that Bianca had been questioning him constantly after they started dating, asking about that Thanksgiving weekend, about the long conversations we'd had about whether there'd been anything more. "There wasn't," I said, steady. "I know." But she built it into something bigger in her head. It became this thing she couldn't let go of. He paused for a moment before continuing. "When we got engaged, she became obsessed with the idea that you might somehow interfere, that you'd show up and outshine her. The invitation to include you as a bridesmaid wasn't her idea. It was your mom's. But everything after that, the changes, the pressure, the removal, that was all Bianca." I asked him why he went along with it. "Because I didn't want to cause conflict," he said quietly. "I thought it would pass, that maybe after the wedding things would calm down. But the day after the ceremony, she told me she's been resentful of you for years. She feels like no matter what she does, people still admire you. Your job, your independence, it gets under her skin." I didn't say anything right away. She didn't want you at the wedding, he added. Not really, but she didn't want to look like the one who pushed you out either. That call stayed with me the rest of the week. It didn't change the past, but it did shift something. Later that month, Aunt Rachel came to visit. She'd been planning the trip for a while, and we spent the weekend walking through Pike Place Market, stopping at small bookstores and coffee shops. On Sunday morning, we sat near the window at a cafe while the rain came down in sheets outside. Your parents never knew what to do with your independence, she said. You didn't need them in the way Bianca did, and they took that the wrong way. I looked down at the coffee cup in my hands. She needed constant reassurance. You didn't. And they equated that with closeness, with love. But that wasn't fair to you. I asked her if she saw it back then. I did, she said quietly. But I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I'm sorry for that. More calls came in over the next few weeks. Cousin Jake said Bianca had told the photographer to crop me out of all the family photos they planned to display. Uncle Dave admitted he asked about my absence during the reception, but was given a vague explanation about me not wanting to participate. Even Amber, an old childhood friend who attended the wedding as one of Wesley's guests, reached out. I kept hearing things about you that didn't match the person I knew growing up, she said. I should have called you sooner. Word started spreading that Wesley had moved out, that they were pursuing an annulment. Mitchell sent a message saying Bianca was back at our parents' house. It was mid-July when my phone rang again. My parents. We may have handled some things poorly, Dad said after a long silence. The wedding was more stressful than we expected, Mom added. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch. Bianca's going through a lot, she continued. She could really use her sister right now. I kept my voice calm. I'm not in a place to offer that. I wish her well, but I need space. They didn't argue. I think they were surprised. That summer, I filled my weekends with long hikes and quiet mornings. I joined a local community garden project and started attending Sunday dinners at Danielle's place down the block. I met Brandon at a weekend trail event, another software developer with a quiet laugh and a warm smile. His family called just to say hello, not to ask for anything. It took some getting used to. I told him about my family one evening over dinner, about the wedding the years before it, the silence that came after. He didn't try to fix anything, just listened and passed me another piece of garlic bread. By the time the annulment was finalized in early October, I felt like I'd built a life that didn't revolve around who approved of me or who didn't. I got promoted to lead a new team at work. My weekends filled up with hikes and dinner parties. Wesley sent a few polite texts during the fall, just check-ins, but never overstepped. And Bianca. She stayed at my parents' house. Her job stalled. Her texts to me when they came were short. One message stood out more than the rest. Sometimes I think about Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. Things might have been different if I hadn't felt so threatened. I read it twice, then typed back, I never meant to threaten you. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm open. The conversation didn't go further than that, not yet. But for once, the next step didn't feel like mine to take. It was a Saturday morning in mid-October when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message came through. Hi, Heather, this is Madison. I just wanted to say thank you for walking away. I hadn't heard her voice in months. We hadn't talked since before the wedding. After everything that happened, I realized how much I'd let myself be pulled along. You were right to step back. I didn't see it then, but I do now. She paused, then added, I hope you're doing okay. I really do. I listened twice, then set the phone down and sat with that feeling quiet, unexpected relief. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk along the lake near my apartment. Brandon joined me. We didn't talk much, just moved at the same pace the way we usually did. Near the water's edge, he looked over and said, You seem lighter lately. Not just today, in general. I thought about that for a moment. I think I stopped trying to win something that was never up for grabs, I said. That evening, I lit a candle I'd been saving and finally deleted the wedding folder from my email. All the receipts, confirmations, and reminders were gone in one click. The next week, I met with Dr. Cameron again. I keep waiting to feel angry, I told her. But mostly, I just feel done. She nodded. Sometimes choosing not to fight back is the most powerful thing you can do, especially when the pattern was built on you always trying. By late fall, the texts from my parents became less frequent. They weren't unkind, just quieter. A shared photo here, an update about someone's retirement there, no mention of Bianca. Around Thanksgiving, I got a card in the mail from Wesley's parents, a simple note handwritten. Thinking of you this season, wishing you peace and strength in all you build. I placed it on the sideboard next to the one from Danielle and the pumpkin-scented candle Brandon's mom had sent. 3 weeks before Christmas, my parents called. We're thinking about a family reunion next summer, Mom said. Maybe up in Asheville. Bianca's excited about it. I waited. We wanted to make sure you'd be able to come, she added. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked a question. When are you thinking mid-June? She said. We've already talked to a few cousins. It's looking like the only time that works for most people. Does Brandon get an invite too? I asked. There was a pause. Well, things are already complicated, and we don't know everyone's comfort levels with new faces. I wrote the date down anyway. I'll check our calendar and get back to you. A week later, I declined the invitation. I already had a trip planned for that week, I said. Maybe next time. Dad sounded disappointed. Family should come first, Heather. Bianca's been trying. I'm glad to hear that I replied. If she wants to reconnect, I'm open to that. But it has to happen in a way that works for both of us. We ended the call not with an argument, but with a quiet understanding that things were different now. That same month, I was promoted to senior engineer. I started leading a team on a project I'd helped design from scratch. When I got the offer, I didn't think about calling my parents. Instead, I texted Aunt Rachel and sent Danielle a photo of the email. Cousin Jake's wedding took place the following March. He and his fiancée Claire made it clear that this one would be different. I wasn't just invited, I was included. Brandon was too. They gave us a hotel room close to the venue, added Brandon's name to the seating chart, and placed us at a table with Lauren and a few cousins who'd stayed in touch. My parents were there, and so was Bianca seated across the room. During the reception, Claire pulled me aside. We wanted everyone to feel welcome, she said. Family is about who shows up and supports each other, not just who shares a last name. I nodded. By dessert, Bianca still hadn't approached me. But as Brandon and I stepped out onto the patio to get some air, I noticed her near the railing. She glanced over. Just a glance. Then looked away. She didn't say anything that night. Neither did I. But a week later, a text came through. You looked happy at the wedding. I hope things are going well. It wasn't a bridge exactly, but it wasn't a wall either. That spring, I spent more weekends outdoors than I had in years. The hiking group grew, some coworkers, a few new friends from the garden project, and Brandon, who brought trail mix, no one liked, but everyone appreciated. Sunday nights became a tradition. Brandon cooked. I set the table. Whoever needed a place to land that week showed up, sometimes just 2 of us, sometimes 10. Danielle called it found family. I didn't call it anything. I just kept showing up. 7 months after the wedding, Mom called again. You've changed, she said, her voice neutral. There's a difference, I replied. She didn't explain what she meant, and I didn't ask. Bianca sent a message not long after. 1 sentence. I'm sorry things happened the way they did. I stared at it for a moment before typing back. Me too. Then I added, when you're ready to talk about it, I'm open. There was no response. But the message stayed marked as read. I didn't follow up. That summer, Brandon and I drove down to Oregon for a weekend in the woods. On the last night, we sat around the fire with a small group from the lodge. Someone asked how we'd met. I told the story, kept it light. Later, one of the guests said, "It's hard to find your way out of messy family stuff." Brandon looked over at me. "Sometimes it's not about getting out," he said. "It's about finally standing still." I didn't say anything, just reached over and took his hand. The annulment was finalized 4 months after the wedding. It happened quietly. No announcement, no family group text. Just a message from Mitchell one afternoon. "It's official," he filed, "fraud and misrepresentation." I read it once, then set the phone face down on the windowsill. Rain was coming in light and steady, tapping softly against the glass. Bianca had moved back into our parents' house by then. According to Aunt Rachel, she told people she just needed time to regroup. Her job had been paused indefinitely, and the few mutual friends we still had said she was keeping to herself. I didn't ask for more than I was told. I wasn't sure I wanted the details. In early November, Wesley sent a short message. "I hope you're well. I'm settling into a place outside Portland. Things are calmer now." I replied, "Glad to hear that. Wishing you peace." He didn't write again for a while. The Monday before Thanksgiving, I got another call from Mom. "We'd like to come visit in January," she said. "Maybe just for a weekend, for what I asked." She hesitated. "To talk. To see how things are going. Maybe start fresh." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Brandon and I had already made plans to visit his parents in Bend for the holiday, so I kept the conversation brief. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time just thinking. That weekend, I saw Bianca's name light up on my screen. Just a text. Sometimes I wonder how things would have turned out if I'd been less afraid. "You always seem so sure of yourself." I reread the message and typed back, "I wasn't. I just stopped trying to prove it." She didn't respond, but I saw the red receipt. By December, the air in Seattle had that clean, sharp chill that comes before snow. I was back to early mornings, long walks before work, and standing in line at my favorite coffee shop with a knit hat pulled low over my ears. At the office, I took on a new mentorship role, 2 junior engineers on the team. I started teaching them the way Kelsey had once helped me. One of them reminded me of myself at that age. Focused, quiet, always double-checking her work. Aunt Rachel called one evening while I was cooking. She reached out to me too, she said. "Bianca, just a few questions about you, about what's changed." "What did you say?" I asked. I told her you're living well. You've stopped waiting for approval. That it's not something you need anymore. I stirred the soup and kept the phone tucked between my shoulder and ear. "She asked if you still miss her," Aunt Rachel said. I didn't answer right away. Later that week, I saw a photo in the family chat, a holiday centerpiece at my parents' house. Red candles, pine cones, silver ribbon. Bianca's name was in the corner tag. Nothing else. No mention of where she was spending Christmas. No invitation extended to me. Brandon's family had us over for a full day of food and board games. His younger sister brought her new baby. His dad made a fire that stayed lit from noon until well past dinner. When they took a group photo on the porch, they included me without hesitation. On the way home that night, I rested my head against the passenger window. "This feels strange," I said. Brandon glanced over. Strange how good strange. In early January, I got a follow-up message from Wesley. "Would it be all right if I sent a letter?" No pressure. Just something I wanted to say properly. I gave him a P.O. box address I kept for work-related mail. It arrived a week later. 4 pages. Handwritten. He didn't go into unnecessary detail, just shared what the early days of the marriage had been like, how it became clear they'd rushed into something without the foundation to support it, how she avoided conversations that might have helped, how he allowed it. "I'm not proud of how I stayed silent, especially when I knew what was happening to you." You didn't deserve that." I folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer I rarely opened. 2 days later, Bianca texted again. "I don't know how to fix this." I sat on that message for over an hour. Eventually, I typed back, "Maybe we don't need to fix it. Maybe we just start fresh. Small steps. When you're ready." A week passed before she answered. "Okay, nothing else. No emojis, no explanation, just one word." I told Danielle about it over coffee that Saturday. She said, "Okay, huh. Yeah, that's something. It is." In February, I got a call from cousin Lauren. She was helping organize the next family gathering and wanted to include me in the planning this time. "We're thinking late summer," she said. "Smaller group, less pressure, just a chance to be together. Thanks for asking," I told her. "Let me check my schedule." Before we hung up, she added, "People are starting to see things more clearly now, not just about what happened at the wedding, but everything before." I didn't reply. I just nodded into the quiet. That evening, Brandon and I stood out on the balcony, 2 mugs of tea in hand. It was cold enough to see our breath. "You've come a long way," he said. I looked out at the city lights. "Feels like I'm just getting started." It was a quiet Monday morning in March when the email came in. Subject line, "Senior Engineer Promotion Confirmation, plus bonus package details." I read it 3 times before it sank in. Full title, Lead Responsibilities Performance Bonus attached. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window just to breathe. Rain had started again, light and steady, like it had all winter. But something about that moment felt different. I forwarded the email to Kelsey first, then to Aunt Rachel. Then I called Danielle and left a message. It happened. I got it. That night, I told Brandon over dinner. He smiled, nodded, and raised his glass. "You earned that," he said. 2 days later, a handwritten card arrived from Wesley's parents. "We heard the news. You continue to inspire. Congratulations." They'd somehow learned about the promotion before my own parents. By the end of the week, word had made its way through the extended family. Cousin Jake texted, then Mitchell, then Lauren. Messages came with quiet congratulations, simple and sincere. My parents didn't call. Bianca didn't either. But I didn't wait for them to. Jake's wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in April. The invitation had come months earlier with a handwritten note from Claire tucked inside. "We hope you'll come and bring Brandon." They'd reserved a block of rooms near the venue and made sure we had one with a king bed and a view. When we arrived, the welcome table already had name tags printed for both of us. I hadn't asked for that. They just did it. At the rehearsal dinner, I spotted Bianca across the room. She was seated at the far end of a long table between Mom and a woman I didn't recognize. Her eyes met mine briefly, then dropped. The next morning, Brandon helped me zip up my navy dress and handed me my shoes. I stood in front of the mirror for a moment before we left, then looked over at him. "You ready?" I asked. He smiled. "I've been ready." At the ceremony, we were seated near the front, closer than I expected. During the vows, I felt Brandon's hand rest lightly over mine. After dinner, Lisa the bride stood to make a toast. "We just want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight. This day is about connection, not just marriage, but family, the ones you're born into and the ones you find." Her voice was steady, clear. She lifted her glass. "To every person who showed up with love." Glasses clinked, chairs shifted. People smiled. Across the room, Bianca looked down at her plate. The dance floor opened about an hour later. I stayed near the edge for a while, watching Brandon laugh with Lauren and a few others. The music was upbeat, the lights low and warm. Then unexpectedly, Mom came over. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me and watched the crowd. "You look like you're doing well," she said after a minute. "I am," I replied. She nodded. "That's good." She didn't stay long, just touched my arm lightly before walking back to her seat. Later that night, Brandon and I stepped outside to get some air. The air was cool but not cold. A few stars visible through the clouds. Cousin Jake found us there. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, "for coming and for making it easier to see how things can be different." I wasn't sure what to say. "Things have shifted," he added. "A lot of people are starting to realize it." We drove back to Seattle the next morning. Quiet ride, no rush. We stopped for coffee halfway and stretched our legs near a river pull-off just before the city. When we got home, I found a small package in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Inside was a photo. Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. The one where Wesley and I first met. We were sitting on the porch swing, feet tucked under both holding mugs. Someone had taken it from inside the house through the window. There was a note attached. "I found this. Thought you should have it. I don't know where to start, but I'd like to try. B." I placed the photo in the drawer next to the letter Wesley had sent. That evening I called Aunt Rachel. She sent something I said. "Did she asked. "Yeah." "And how do you feel about that?" "I feel ready." The next weekend we had Sunday dinner with Danielle and her wife. Brandon made roasted chicken. I brought dessert. 2 more friends came by unexpectedly. We added chairs, poured more tea, sliced the pie thinner. The table stretched to hold us all. I looked around and realized this was it. My life just as it was, steady, full, chosen. Spring came early that year. By April, the cherry trees along my street in Seattle had already started to bloom. I'd walk under them on my way to work, petals falling like soft snow, clinging to my coat sleeves and hair. It felt symbolic somehow, things shedding gently, making room for whatever was next. Bianca and I didn't have a big reunion. No dramatic apology or long conversation. It started small. A photo, a note, then a few short texts. We didn't force it. By June, we were exchanging occasional voice messages. Nothing heavy, just pieces of life. A recipe she'd tried. A trail I'd hiked. She never said the words, "I'm sorry," but the tone was different now. Softer. Quieter. She was no longer trying to win or defend. And I wasn't trying to be seen. My parents reached out more often, too. Not with guilt or explanations, just simple check-ins. One day, Mom called and asked about Brandon by name. It was the first time she'd done that. When I told her we were planning a trip to Glacier National Park, she asked to see pictures when we got back. I said I'd send them. The family reunion they planned in late summer went ahead without me. I sent a card and a photo of Brandon and me with Mount Reynolds in the background. A few relatives texted back. No one asked why I didn't come. And that, in its own quiet way, was progress. Work stayed steady. My team grew. Some evenings I stayed late to help a junior developer run through a tricky piece of code. Other nights I left early to make dinner with Brandon or meet Danielle for coffee. My life no longer felt like something I had to explain or justify. It just was. Aunt Rachel still called every Sunday. We didn't always talk about the past, but when we did, it was with distance. Like sorting through an old box, recognizing what was inside, then setting it down and closing the lid. Bianca and I had lunch one afternoon in September. She picked a little cafe near the water. We talked about safe things, work, weather, new books. But before we left, she paused. "You seem steady," she said. "Like you don't need anything from me." I nodded. "I don't. But I'm still glad you reached out." She smiled. Not big, not forced, just a quiet smile that stayed in her eyes. We walked to our cars without hugging. It didn't feel cold, it just felt honest. That night I stood on my balcony and watched the last of the summer light disappear behind the hills. The sky faded from pink to gold, then to the deep blue that always makes me feel a little still inside. I thought about everything that had changed and everything that hadn't. There's a kind of justice that doesn't come loud or quick. It doesn't show up in apologies or public reckoning. Sometimes justice is just the quiet knowing that you don't have to beg to be included anymore, that your worth isn't up for debate. Sometimes the real victory is walking away and building something steady with your own hands. I used to think closure would come in the form of a grand apology. Now I know it comes in moments standing up for yourself, without shouting, letting go without bitterness, choosing peace without explanation. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If any part of this story echoed something in your own life, I'd love to know. You're welcome to share in the comments or just sit with it quietly. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, feel free to follow along. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You deserve that. Always have.